Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Untitled Reviews. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about The Bear, Season 2, Episode 5. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So, obviously, it's only been like a week in between last episode and this episode. 6 weeks to open, and Jimmy's being kind of shown everything, and I love that he walks in and he's like, because Nat's like, yeah, there's been kind of like some scheduling issues. He's like, why is that guy making an effing sandwich? It's like, yeah, that's Richie's electrician. And he's like, hey, Richie's electrician, why are you making a sandwich? It's like, yeah, I can't do anything until I can't do any electrician stuff until the plumbing is done. But there's been a scheduling issue on that front. I even love later on, this guy is like, Timmy shows up. In fact, it's like, yo, Timmy, hey, back. It's like, wait, where'd you get the sandwich from? It's like, oh yeah, like the electrician fixed me one. I'm like, I love he's making himself at home because everyone's sitting around waiting because one person can't do their job until another person does theirs. And it's like, right, you don't want to miss this opportunity. It's like, right, we got to keep Timmy here because we need him here because this was like the only day he was available. If we miss him now, it's going to completely screw everything up, even though everything's already massively screwed up the way it is. It's like, once again, there are no walls up. They haven't even begun. They can't put any walls back up probably until they get a lot of this stuff back done. And then it's just one thing feeds into another. It's like, it's actually, and if you actually really think about it, it's actually kind of a very effed up comparison. We're like, yeah, someone's body, kind of like, the store is the body, and it's just like, oh, this particular problem led to kidney failure, and so on and so forth, and this set off this and this and that, and so it's, they kind of using it as a more like anatomy type of thing of just like, man, this place is gutted and just like nothing's kind of going the way it's supposed to. And we have 6 weeks. Jimmy's talking about the fact is, I've already sunk 450 in this, and Natalie's like 550. Carmen's like, why would you even mention the extra $100,000 at this point in time? And she's almost like, sorry, I'm the numbers person, so I got to keep it real. So, but I also love Natalie being like, I'm so no good at this. Uncle Jay, you've always been really good at this. And I'm just so bummed I couldn't do anything about it. He's like, no, don't beat yourself up about it. It's my job. Come on, let me show you something. And as she's walking out, she's like, go fuck yourselves or something like that. And Carmen's like, yo, that was fucking gross, sugar. I was like, I loved it. Cause even Richie was looking at it too and busted out laughing later. Cause it's like, yo, she played Jay like I guess that's just their relationship. She kind of bats her eyes and kind of plays like, oh, woe is me. It's like, yo, she's very manipulative. I love that. That's why Carmen was just like, that was gross. That was disgusting what you just did in front of us. Playing him like that. And I don't know if I legitimately don't think he recognizes he was getting played, because she's like, oh man, we can't really get this wine license like we're supposed to. And Jimmy's like, nah, I could kind of cut some corners and get that for you. He's like, really? Oh, that'd be really appreciative, Uncle. Like, it's like, man, she's playing him like a fiddle, and I love it. But, I even love later on, because, two of the people working, like, one of them is, it's like, oh yeah, hey boss. And Richie's like, see, he calls me boss. And the other guy there's like, he wasn't talking about you. And the guy's like, I wasn't talking about you, talking about Natalie being the boss. Because this, once again, it goes back to what's been built upon since last season. And you're seeing it more and more this season, where it's like, Richie doesn't have a place at the restaurant anymore. It's like, he recognizes it and other people are kind of recognizing it. Like, he has no skills. The only contribution he has brought to the restaurant is kind of nothing, because he's kind of helping make things kind of worse, because he's acting like he knows what he's doing, but really he doesn't. Even to the point later on, Natalie's asking Sid, like, yo, could you hook him up with something to do? She's like, I'm trying to give him stuff to do that I know that even if he screws it up, it won't completely fuck us over. So, and she was asking Sid to kind of help in some regard of finding him something to do. It's like, it's sad that, like, it's like Richie's got to be relegated to, like, yo, like, we need to put some keys in his hands and make him feel, distracted. It's like, you got to treat him like a child, because in a lot of people's eyes, he is nothing more than a big child. He always has been. But once again, back when Mikey was running the place, like, there was an ebb and flow. He had his place, even though he really didn't really have a place here. He still had a place here, and now everyone else is doing it. Once again, the moment things started changing for Tina last season, you saw it more and more of, like, he felt more and more like an outsider, like this place, like he wanted this place to stay the same. He needed it to stay the same because he kind of had no place outside of it. I mean, his family life, it's complicated at best. I mean, I think that also leans into the fact that's why he latches on to like Carmen and Mikey's family, because it is kind of like his family, but at the same time, it kind of isn't. So he kind of feels like he's stumbling in the dark. He has nowhere else to kind of really call his own at this time. And so that's why he's holding on. He wants to prove that he's useful. It's like, no, I got this. I can do something. So it leads to him doing stupid stuff because he thinks he knows better when in actuality he doesn't. And so when they talked about a particular episode I haven't gotten to yet, so I was talking about Richie, specifically I think episode 7 is going to be a major Richie episode based on the way someone was talking about without really talking spoilers. But it seems like a lot of that culminates, maybe not saying like it all concludes, but like all of this stuff has been building towards, I think, Richie's story, which is apparently going to be episode 7. I think that's going to be probably a big part of that story. So, and you're just seeing it build and build. And all the while this is happening, you can tell, once again, bit by bit, and kind of in leaps and bounds in this episode, you can see like deterioration between Sid and Carmen's partnership, because it's like, right, she's trying to talk to Carmen about something, and she's like, oh yeah, we got this person, but they might want like a sign-on bonus. It's like, oh, like 2 like hired people, or like it was a hired person even later on being like, oh yeah, I got like hired cooks or something like that. But Carmen was like, yeah, like we'll talk about that later, because they didn't want to talk about anything that was going to cost more money right there in front of Uncle Jay. But the fact is, it's like we should be having these conversations, and you're kind of brushing me aside, because I'd say like Carmen and Sid are cut from the same cloth if they can have tunnel vision, and I think Sid has her tunnel vision on all of this, but like Carmen's tunnel vision is spread in so many different directions, not even really tunnel vision anymore. Or maybe the argument is his eyes kind of off the ball in other directions, just because he's got to worry about so much other stuff. Because once again, because it's also like the whole point was like he was going to handle the more managerial side of things, she was going to handle the more cooking side of things, but she's still getting his advice about stuff, because he is still the chef, and even to the point it's like, oh, we got all this like plates and stuff out, and he's like, oh, how about this, because it's silent, like this should be the like plateware we use. And she's like, yeah, that's $55 a plate. He's like, okay, then we'll use the cheap stuff. Like you could tell, like it was like I'm the one that figured out. That's why I realized, like, she's like, I'm not stupid, I knew that would be a better plate, but these are better options because they're cheaper. And even Natalie's like, oh my God, this is great. How much? He's like, yeah, that's 55 a plate. And she's like, nope. It's like for her, it's probably like, because you're not talking to me, you're not listening to me. I would have, if you had like gotten time to really talk to me, I would have told you ahead of time, hey, that plate's too expensive. That's why I'm choosing the more, once again, it's that thing of, oh, he made some unilateral decisions about tearing down the wall. She kind of made some decisions about the plates, because really she can't get in communications with him, which that leads to issues later on when like Richie's doing stuff with the amperage. And it's like, yeah, like he could severely have like done something really stupid and dangerous. And it's like, well, why didn't you call me? And Sid's like, oh, I guess I'll like make sure to call you next time. And it's like, well, you didn't call me about the wall, but I was supposed to call you about this. Cause I guess, I wonder who told Natalie, because Natalie already knew about the Claire situation, that they've been hanging out a lot recently. So I wonder, did Carmen open up to her about that? Or was it just a situation of, I figured out of anyone who probably would tell, it's probably Fack. Fack probably was like, oh yeah, like, because he, takes credit for it later on, being like, oh yeah, like I kind of made that happen, So maybe he ended up running his mouth off about that situation, so. Because we're learning little by little about, like, we knew Carmen and Claire had history, but we didn't know, like, how deep they go. I mean, well, we kind of did, because we know they've known each other since they were kids, but what led to them kind of going their separate ways hasn't really gotten really covered yet. But they cut away from it, but we did have, like, Nat kind of start, like, because Sid was like, oh, who's Claire? And so she's probably going to keep that in the back of her mind when she's thinking about Carmen's, like, focus on this whole situation of like, yeah, you're so focused on your personal life and instead of like helping with the restaurant, even though he is, but it's also like you're making yourself unavailable. Because I'm wondering if Sid probably putting 2 to 2 together of like, oh, when we're supposed to be sampling stuff, reason why he bailed on me was because of Claire back in episode 3. So I'm curious, it's like Sid's kind of piecing that together, and maybe for her it's like that's also why I can't get Carmen's attention, which good on you, but like everyone else is kind of at their wheels spinning because you're not really at the helm like you're supposed to, and you want to be at the helm, but we can't reach you when we need you, and you I don't know. Because he's also not handling the Richie situation like he should. Like, if it was up to Natalie, it's like, yo, I'd completely cut him out. But it's like he has like family and she doesn't want to hurt his feelings because he is trying and he does want to be useful. And I think Carmen's in the same boat, even to the point that it's like, yo, Richie, like go home. He's like, no, man, I got this. Like, let me do this, please. Like, let me. It's like, yo, good night, Richie. And even to the point he was telling everyone's like, all right, everybody stop. Just like go home. We're good. And she's like, oh, okay. And he's like, what's wrong? She's like, no, nothing. I'm about to go. Like, the animosity's there because Sid's not the very like aggro person. She is very like passive aggressive, like I'm kind of seeing that. That's just, you know, and I think that's just the nature of the beast of the situation. But it's like it's a lot of that seething, and I think Natalie's probably going to witness it. I mean, because she even, you know, because she was even like, yo, I was trying to talk to Carmen about this stuff, but he sucks, and she's like, I'm sorry, that's your bro and everything. But it's like, no, it's like, no, don't worry about it. Carmen sucks, but you know, at least things are better for him because at least he's spending time with, you know, Clay. Which, speaking of, I did like that ended up being a good chunk of their story this episode. At first, it's like, oh, I needed you to drive me somewhere. And I love the whole conversation about like, oh yeah, like, residency. It's like kind of gross and like pretty intense and stuff. It's like, yeah, but it's like, obviously like all the time and dedication to it, like the hundreds of hours like you're putting towards it must mean like you're really like into it. And she's like, oh, it sounds like the same, like you must really love it. She's like, yeah, I do. She's like, yeah, but it, you know, the same thing about running a restaurant's the same way. It can be intense. It can be gross. It can be gnarly. It can be gnarly specifically to where it can be gnarly and gross. And now you put all the time in it. He's like, yeah, I guess I do love it. So. But I love they dropped it. It's like, oh, we're supposed to be doing this shady thing of like, yeah, let's drop off this paperwork so that we can get like the wine or whatever license or whatever, and they drop it off, and it's just kind of like, okay, that was kind of anticlimactic. Cool. And they actually talk about the history, like I brought up earlier, they do talk about the history where it's like, she's like, I remember like sitting behind you in school, and because it was like, right, we like hung out like all the time, but we never really talked. But she's like, no, I get that. That is such an interesting thing. Like you can hang around people all the time, but it's like, do you ever like take time to like sit back and like talk, you know, get to really like talk about like some real shit and stuff like that. So we didn't really get to know each other like that. I guess it's almost this thing of like, we've always hung around, but it was always just never we never got to the nitty gritty. We never got like really real with our hangouts and stuff. And she had talked about sitting behind him in a particular class where it's like, I used to see you drawing stuff all the time. He was like, oh yeah, like these particular short pants, like short pants. And he was talking about how they were going to be customized a certain way, and it was going to be super high level. But then he found out like, oh, there are people who already do that, so it killed his dream. But when at one of the restaurants he was working, he actually met that person who makes those particular pants in the way that he wanted to make them. So it's like, oh, their dream was kind of revived a little. And it's like, you know, he's like, I wish you had talked to me more. And she's like, well, you're the shy person. Because for him, it's like, yo, you always had like friends. And I think for him, that was always kind of like a hard barrier to like penetrate, where it's just kind of like, right, you're surrounded around people, and you can tell like Carmen, unless it's a certain group of people, he's weird around large groups of people. I think just kind of not his like comfort zone. And it's like, yeah, Mike was like that too. Like, oh, he's, you know, set shit on fire and stuff. And she's even like, yeah, I don't want to like, I didn't want to really bring him up. I didn't really want to talk about it because I didn't want you to have to think about it. It's like, he's like, no, I like thinking about him. You know, so dead brothers aside. So like, speaking of dead brothers, want to go to a party. I actually thought for a second, because of the transition, I was almost like, whoa, was Tina and Carmen at the same party? It's like, no, they weren't. But for a second, I thought they were, because she ends up going to a bar. We'll get Tina in a set. But I love that, because she was going to like help her friend who, Kelly, who just went through a breakup. And, Carmen's there, and I love the guy like, Carmen, oh, it's me, Kyle, we were like the wrestling team. He's like, yeah, man. It's like, Claire's like, didn't you get in trouble recently? It's like, yeah, man, I'm getting a little wild with the ambience, so I ended up breaking into a T-Mobile and, stealing phones. It's like, oh, it's like a disease. He's like, yeah, addiction, it's like a disease. He's like, no, man, stealing phones. I get like hardcore fixated. It's like, Jesus, dude. And he's the one out there like, firing off fireworks. I even love what Kelly's like breaking down about her breakup. She's just like, who's out there lighting fireworks. And he ends up getting arrested later. It's like, oh, I'm getting arrested for having fun. That party was wild to the point some dude walked up and was like, yo, Logan. He's like, yeah. And Carmen just accepted it and went with the flow with it. And they're like, yeah, classic Logan. I'm like, I love that. Did you just pretend it to be someone you're not? It's like, fuck it. I probably won't ever see any of these people again. They don't know me. I don't really know them. But hey, it's fun. Lean into being Logan. Because maybe even for a little bit, it might be nice to kind of play being someone else where you don't have to kind of be yourself. So it's probably kind of nice. And I don't know, I just thought that was really interesting. And him and Molly, Claire, Molly's the actress's real name. Him and Claire had this moment where she was even like, why'd you give me your fake number? And for him, it's like, I really like you. And he's like, I miss so much. It's just, I think for him, it's like, why I can't, like, legitimately, he was scared with just everything going on. And also like, right, like, I don't want to kind of ruin things. Like, oh, like so much of life kind of passed us by and I'm kind of worried, like, missed so much back then where it's like, once again, we didn't really talk. Like, obviously we've liked each other, but we never really just like anything ever happened. I thought something did happen, like they were exes or something, but it seems like, no, they always are in each other's orbit. Nothing happened. And then they just didn't see each other for like some years. Cause he's like, yeah, I kind of missed out on like the college experience and stuff like that. Considering like the party and everything. It's just kind of what I missed out on. It's like, well, you were in France. He was like, yeah, well, Copenhagen. I was like, no, it was pretty cool. So I'm assuming that's kind of like the same place like Marcus is at right now with Luca and everything for last episode. So I'm sure like it's probably like the same thing. But I do think I think that was also meant to be, just like a cinematography thing, and just like, oh, the metaphor of like, oh, fireworks are flying off between them and there are literal fireworks in the background. Like, it's meant to be like very blatant like that, I think. But it's like, oh, do you want to go see my restaurant after the party got shut down? So went, and then that turned into the whole blowout at the end of the episode, sadly. And I love that Fat came to like, get his tools. He's like, oh, once again, I made that happen. He's like, I know. It's like, Carmi, she's great. And so are you. You guys are both great. I want you. He's like, thanks, I love you, buddy. I love you too. But I need you to go now. He's like, yeah, but I was supposed to meet Richie on top of the roof because they were told he needed his tools for the whole, like, basically trying to steal amperage from like, the place next door. And it's like, that lost them their powers. And it's like, oh, they were friends. It's like, yeah, are you still friends afterwards? But it's like, fuck your tools. Fat can get out of here. It's like, no, okay, I see what time it is, and just kind of leaves. So thought that was kind of neat, and some hardcore making out later on between the two of them. Like it finally happens. It's been building. Like anytime we've had these scenes between them so far, it's been like, okay, you feel the chemistry, you feel like things kind of like, once again, the fireworks going off, and now they finally. Let's say they were lit the entire time, and now they finally go off. I guess it's going to be more apt to say. So there's that side of thing. Oh yeah, really quickly, I also want to add something I completely forgot about. Is like during the whole like debacle at the end of the episode, I love that when Richie goes over to Claire and is like, so you've met Frank, right? She's like, yeah. It's like, oh yeah, he's a great guy. And just like Richie just once again, that little bit of dialogue, because Frank is the new guy. He's quote unquote Uncle Frank. He heard about Frank even more from his daughter. Like, was it the episode before last? Episode 3. And it's like, that's the new guy in his mom's life. Or maybe he's an old guy that's like a guy that's been in her life and just kind of been a friend, but now he's become more of a friend. But now it's like, oh, you're finding out like, oh, Frank's actually a great guy or whatever. I'm sure that like at a time, once again, where Richie's as lost as he is, and not feeling like he has a place to kind of find out. It's just like he's losing his place in so many different places, and he's trying to hold on to everything with his daughter, even to the point he'd actually hit up Jimmy, because I completely forgot about this until now, where Jimmy was like, he was asking Jimmy about this Taylor Swift tickets, which is like, dude, kind of a wrong time when I'm literally talking to you about the fact that I'm sinking all this money into this restaurant and I might need to go ahead and just kind of pull out now, considering we're 6 weeks away and I'm not really seeing much progress. It just kind of adds more to the like situation of like, yeah, Richie's going through it. There's also the Tina of it all. She like we caught up with Ibra for a tiny bit at the beginning of the episode. He's kind of off on his own. Apparently, he hasn't shown up for the classes for like a couple days. And even Tina's like, I haven't talked to you in a couple days. She's like, which is weird because I've never gone a few days without talking to you. He's like, right, they were working at the restaurant. Probably ever since then, they've been so tight that it's like, we, like, probably even outside of work, like, it's always been a thing of like, we've always been around each other. And now when you're not there, it's weird. I even love that Carmen gave her knife and she's like, whoa, Jeffrey, this is your knife. He's like, no, it's yours, chef. And she's like, you got so excited. And then she was slicing up a fish and the teacher was like, excellent cuts. And she was like, thanks, chef. And it's like she was feeling herself, even to the point like some of the other people, like one of the people at the school, like invited her out for a party, and they were going not party, they were going out for drinks, and she went along, but you could tell she was nervous because it's like once again, it's like her and Ibra had the connection of like, hey, we're both the older people in this situation. These are younger people. It made them feel weird, and even she kind of didn't feel like she really belonged. But she got up there and did her thing on the karaoke, and everyone was just like, yo, Tina. She went up there and did her thing, and I think for her, she was kind of, you know, I think it's kind of representative of Tina putting herself out there and kind of getting rewarded for it, where I think it's like parallel where Iba's kind of shutting himself off because kind of paralleling all that with Richie, where I think Ibra's kind of feeling a little lost, just like Richie is, and Tina's kind of feeling like she's finding herself, like, yo, like she's made for this shit. Like, this is something like, yo, I can do this. I'm putting my all into it, and she kind of found a place outside of Beef/the Bear, you know. So I think that's so interesting and so nice. She did bring it up to Carmen's like, oh, have you talked to Ibra? He's like, no, why? She's like, no, don't worry about it. It's like, probably didn't want to stress about it, didn't want to make a mountain out of a molehill, but it's like, I'm curious to see where the whole Ibra situation goes. Like, is Tina going to be able to reach out to him, especially where you almost feel like Tina and him are kind of getting further and further apart because of he's kind of distancing himself from her while she's staying behind at the school and she's kind of excelling. And because we had saw the last time we saw Ibra at the school, like he was staying later because he was probably a little slower than everyone else. He was trying to keep up, but he felt like he can't. He feels like he's so out of his element that it's like, I'm curious to see what that means. And he probably doesn't want to go back to the beef or whatever because he doesn't want to like show up. It's like, right, you put all this time, you wanted me to do this, and I don't want to come back a failure, but I don't feel like I belong. I feel like I'm out of my element. Like, maybe I'm not cut out for this. Like I said, whereas Tina feels like she is. She's finding her stride and her place in all this. So, I mean, that's what everyone's trying to do in this situation. Try to make this all work while also trying to find their place. And, you know, and I think that's kind of a beautiful theme and element of the show. I'm really curious to ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.